Yo, what's going on, everybody? Back again here in the Full Press Hockey Weekly Show. I'm your host, the voice of Full Press Hockey, Jim Berenger, rocking and rolling with my NWO teammate, Chris Wassel and Ian Glennon in the background. You can get it at Full Press NHL on Twitter, fullpresshockey.com. Get it YouTube, Twitch, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're back again. The Stanley Cup playoffs are rolling. Hey, yo, survey time. If you ain't down with this podcast, get out of here. Because you know, survey says one more for the good guys. Scott Hall, rest in peace, my brother.
Man, that says it all right there.
That's it, man. We're back again. Stanley Cup playoffs. We rolling. Like the road teams are rolling.
Crazy.
But we're into round 2 Stanley Cup playoffs. Upset City in the first round. Kind of saw it coming with some. Didn't see it with others. But the New Jersey Devils into round 2. Who would have thought?
Yeah, you, me.
Yeah, you, me.
Yeah, a few other people.
Yeah, a few other people.
The pressure wasn't on us.
No, it was not on us. It was not. It was
nice.
all on the big city and the bright lights in New York because they had the roster. They made the big moves. Not to say the Devils didn't make big moves. They did get Timo Meier. But it was supposed to be at the Rangers. They went to the conference final last year. They're supposed to win. The Devils weren't supposed to win. They were the underdog, despite what Vegas said. And again, I'll say it again in this round. Despite what Vegas says, the Devils are an underdog. I don't care their favorite. Hey, look. Hey, you never know. You never know.
Look, we've said this a number of times before. You look at teams that just barely skated out of the first round, and then all of a sudden, whoop! Look at that. Great. You know, there's a bunch of examples. Obviously, 2012 Devils is the classic example. They needed Game 6 in overtime and Game 7 in double overtime against Florida, and then look at what happened.
They went on a run, man. They went on a run. Look, they ran like we've documented this. They ran into a Flyers team that, beat up Pittsburgh, and they beat themselves up too with that rivalry. And then the Rangers always go to 7 games, so they usually don't have anything left.
It almost went to 7. But at the same time, and then you look at a team like this year, like, well, we hate to say it, but it's true, Florida.
Yep.
Starting to have that look where it's like, well, the regular season, get hot at the right time, end up at one of the last seeds.
LA Kings vibes.
It does a little bit. I mean, because if you looked at the early part of that game last night, Florida was hitting everything in sight.
Oh, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, everybody.
It wasn't just one play. It wasn't just one person.
It was every line. It was every line. Just hitting, getting pucks deep, hitting the defenseman, wearing them down. Similar to what Seattle does. Get the puck deep, hit finisher checks, cycle, just constantly making guys turn around, miss assignments, and the guys are open at the point or in the slot, and the puck's in the net.
Yeah, and by the time Dallas adjusted to that, it was 20 minutes too late. Well, 5 minutes too late in their case. For those that did not see that game last night, if you missed 5 minutes, you missed almost all the goals.
Yeah, you did.
Or it felt like it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, 6 goals in the first period, 4 on Jake Ottinger when, he wasn't really giving up much to Minnesota in the first round. And, Dallas gets through. I mean, the save on Marcus Johansson, and congratulations, Johansson, 2-year contract in Minnesota. He's going to stay there. But that save in Game 4, and then he's pretty much been lights out since. But again, going into those games, I had a feeling that these road teams and the teams that played Game 7 were going to do well because they just played a game. They hadn't been off for a while.
That was the fear. Now, to be fair, I figured maybe Dallas would get off to a better start
Which they did.
Which they did, which was the funny part. You're expecting that game to be like 1-0, 2-1, maybe after the first period, and then Seattle starts to wear on them a little bit because the adrenaline run. No, the adrenaline ran off at about the 11-minute mark of the first period.
Yeah.
And then all the goals just kept coming. I mean, to be fair, there was one guy who clearly was not tired, was well rested, and is the source of much alliteration today. And that,
Look,
of course,
Joe Pavelski. I mean, guy's been out since game 1 when he got the concussion. Dude, this guy is the best guy at tipping pucks in. It contorts his body, contorts his stick, puts the puck in the net.
it's ridiculous.
He's a playoff performer. Ever since he's got to Dallas, it was a playoff performer in San Jose, but he's elevates his game for Dallas ever since he got there. Remember his first year in Dallas? You know, it wasn't going well in the regular season. All of a sudden, he gets the time off. He goes to the bubble. He's a new man.
Magic. It was like magic. It just completely reinvigorated. And you saw it last night where it was just like, you know, it's 4-2 after 1. A lot of people turned the TV off. Wait, he scored what?
He scored 4 goals.
Oh, it's
and he almost had a winner in overtime.
He almost, and that's the part that people forget. Earlier in the overtime, he, by rights, should have had Cinco.
Yeah, he should have. He should have. Look, give credit to Dallas coming back. They had Seattle on the heels. Seattle played good. But again, Seattle rolls their 4 lines. They're 4 lines deep. That's what they've done all year.
Yep.
5 different goal scorers. It's a trend. Dave Hackstall got this team playing the right way. Guys are in the right situation, understanding their role. They built the team the right way. Philip Grubauer's really stepped his game up, but he's going to have to play better because Dallas is just going to continue because they have a really, really good team, and I would not be surprised if Pavelski's back on the top line in game 2.
No, without it in a sense, Seattle is facing a probably more potent Dallas team, to be bluntly honest, than what they faced against Colorado. Seattle's playing with house money, as everybody knows. They knocked off the defending champs. Philip Grubauer got his revenge at last, two years later. Then you figure, well, Dallas has 6th, 7th best offense in the league, has one of the best power plays in the league, has one of the best playoff performers on the power play right now in the league, and has the goaltending and defense, presumably, that it's not that Seattle doesn't. People forget that Seattle allowed the 2nd fewest shots on goal per game all season. The difference is the opportunities that they give up. This Dallas team is going to keep coming with speed.
Well, what was it, the trend? I saw it going into the 3rd period last night.
Mm-hmm.
ESPN put up the trend that Seattle gives up the most 3rd period goals in the playoffs. Is that right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And Dallas is one of the top 5 teams in scoring goals in the 3rd period.
They're in the playoffs.
So something was going to give, and Dallas was able to score, and Seattle was not. But give credit to what Seattle did against Colorado. Like, we all knew Colorado wasn't the team that they were last year. Dealing with injuries, McCarr, McCarr, Rantanen, and McKinnon all did their part. Goaltending was good. It was good enough to win, but the depth scoring wasn't there like it was last year. They probably should have added that 2nd line center at the deadline.
Here's something wild.
I'm not going to keep harping on it, but I think it was a pretty important factor.
No, it was. One of the wilder stats from last night is really how even this game was, even though it didn't look it at times. There's numbers out there to just go, huh? You know, Seattle played an extremely good road game for the circumstances. Obviously, you know, less rest didn't matter. They had a plan, and they stuck to it. They stuck to it to a fault because they had to. That was the only way that they were going to win game 1. But here's something not odd necessarily, but something that became a trend later in the 3rd period and overtime. So from about, I'd say maybe the 5-6 minute mark of the third period, Jim, to the end of overtime, Dallas had 8 high danger scoring chances.
That's a lot of high danger scoring chances.
Seattle only had 4. Now, it's not a huge spread, obviously, but if you look at this overall scoring chances at that point, it starts to bleed context, because you can throw shots on goal out all you want, because there were 10-4 in overtime, by the way, for Seattle, but you would have never known it by what you saw in overtime.
No, Dallas was controlling the play in overtime.
Yeah, 5 of Dallas's 8 scoring high danger chances in that 30-minute period or so came in the first 10 minutes of overtime. So people have to understand that it's very deceiving when you're watching the way a team plays. And look, Seattle was playing bend but not break hockey, and it worked. All they needed was one play, and they got it. And they got it from, of course, a guy that is familiar with playoff success, and of course, it's Yanni Gourde.
Yeah, Yanni Gourde. I mean, look, it's a tough shot. Don't get me wrong. He had some zip on it, and it goes in past Ottinger. And again, the theme of different goal scorers. I mean, they had 15 different goal scorers in the first round.
Yep.
And that Seattle plays a team game and a grinding game, and I'm not shocked that they took game 1. And I'm not shocked that Florida took game 1 either, because of what they did to Boston in that forecheck and the grinding and the hitting. And, Sergei Bobrovsky now, $10 million man, he's in the net. Sometimes he has lapses. He does. But he's made the timely save for the Florida Panthers when they needed it. And, it's not like Ilya Samsonov played bad for Toronto in the game, but he didn't give the Leafs a chance to win. Now, granted, Florida survived the early onslaught from Toronto. Toronto had multiple power plays in the game early on, and then they went to work. Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, Nick Cousins, that line. Can't call them the top line, but that Tkachuk line is very dangerous. Imagine when Barkov gets going for this Florida Panthers team now. But Tkachuk, 3 assists. This guy, you have to put him up there as one of the best playoff performers right now in the NHL. This guy just raises his game every year. I think that having Sam Bennett allows him to just go play his game, because he doesn't have to be the agitator. And that was the difference last year with the Edmonton Oilers series. Tkachuk just wanted to agitate. He didn't want to go play his game, which was offensive-minded, go hit, grind it out. Paul Maurice is giving Tkachuk an agitator on his line. I was just saying, you got to put Tkachuk up there as one of the best playoff performers right now. But the fact is he's not being stupid like he was against the Oilers last year. You got Sam Bennett to go hit people. He can throw hits and be an agitator, but Bennett is allowing Tkachuk to be a more offensive-minded player now.
So you mean he's learning?
Yeah.
That's just what people don't want to hear, Jim. Oh, wait, unless you're in Florida, then you really want to hear it.
Well, I mean, this guy put up back-to-back 100-point seasons. He basically carried this team to the playoffs along with Alex Lyon. But again, Sergei Bobrovsky's made the save when he's needed to. And it's not that Samsonov played poorly. I think the fact that forecheck of Florida got the Maple Leafs defenseman and the Maple Leafs player out of position, so the slot passes were there for guys to shoot the puck. I mean, who would have thought Brandon Montour become a scoring machine? I mean, I know he had a career year, but Carter Verhaeghe, we know what he can do. I just imagine when Barkov gets going.
By the way, you figured the nice rested Leafs team would come out like all guns blazing in this game?
They did, but they
to
did.
A point.
They had two power plays. They had two power plays, and they didn't execute though.
That's the problem. Look at the way Florida. It's interesting. Florida's penalty kill, for as much maligned as it has been at times all during the season, was not perfect, but they were effective at containing the danger points of the Toronto power play in Game 1. And that shouldn't happen. When you have last line change and you have all the options at your disposal, it should not happen. And it happened many times in game one where, look, I can't believe I'm saying this. Wait, it's May 3rd at 6:20. Paul Maurice flat out outcoached Sheldon Keefe in game one, time and time again.
He did. Well, I love the little subtle,
Little
like to
bit.
the referees, be like, buddy, where the penalties. Now, look, Devils fans can complain to the moon and agree with Paul Maurice. I mean, the penalties for the Rangers were a little lopsided.
Little.
It was a lot lopsided. And to be fair, the officiating throughout the playoffs in the first round has not been the greatest. Luckily, Tuesday night wasn't as bad, but let me tell you something. Watching game 7 and what was called and what wasn't called, like, as a player, I'd be frustrated.
And this wasn't just, to be fair for everybody listening, this was all the last 3 game 7s in particular.
Yeah.
It wasn't just what we saw Monday night. It was what we saw Sunday evening as well, where after a while you just kind of sat there and went, huh? Then that wasn't. But that was.
I mean, the perfect example. I mean, I know, it could sound, and the Devils won, so it doesn't really matter. But Jack Hughes, that's a hook. Like it's been a hook all year. And what they called at the beginning of the game, the little ticky-tack stuff that they called at the beginning of the game, especially the one on Bastion, it's like, this is game 7. Like, we've seen where they've put the whistles away and let the guys play hockey.
And it's weird because, like, you saw, like, some of the game 6s, a major difference where that's more or less what happened.
Right.
That's why a couple of those refs are onward to round 2 and some aren't, but yet one is that arguably only is because of his name.
Right, exactly.
But again, this is the kind of thing that frustrates, it not only frustrates the media, it frustrates teams, and of course it's going to frustrate the fans and aggravate them to no end because, well, let's be honest about it. Who knows what a penalty is and at the same time you understand the fact that not everything can be called. You're just more aggravated because of almost what's like in-game adjustments.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden we're going to call stuff and then then the whistles go away. It's like,
yeah, in the second half of the game, in game 7, for example, with the Devil game on Monday night, there was a time where like the whistles just went away.
Right. And if that was the standard from the beginning of the game, I would have had no problem with it.
Yeah, it's weird to say this, but at 2-0, the whistle suddenly went away.
Exactly.
I mean, it was really distinct too, and that's what creeps some people out. And it kind of did that with the Kraken Avalanche game in the third period on Sunday night. I don't know if people caught that. Hopefully they did, but there was a distinct point where you just sat there and went, "Wasn't that okay?" And you just kind of have to stomach it. I mean, tonight, for example, I mean, we're going to see what happens with, when shoot, you have 4 relatively high octane teams going against each other tonight.
Let's see if what gets called and not get called. But look, New Jersey's moving on. They took care of business in game 7. Look, it's funny. The first 4 games, the road team won. The last 3 games, the home team won. And if New Jersey doesn't make mistakes in game 6 at the beginning of it, they're probably closing out that series in 6 because the Rangers, let's face facts, the Rangers couldn't handle their speed. And New Jersey's speed was evident for the final through the final 4 games of that series.
Yeah. Games 4 through 7, without a doubt. And even parts of game 3, you could start this. Even in games 1 and 2 at times, Jim, you could see it.
You could see it. It just wasn't coming together. Once they got that win, though, they got confidence. They played a lot better. They were playing good, and the Rangers were on their heels a lot, and they forechecked the heck out of the puck. they outwork the Rangers up and down the ice. It's not the same old neutral zone trap. It's the offensive guys coming back, supporting the defense, the speed. These guys aren't just hanging back. They're attacking the puck and doing it the right times.
No, you're right. I mean, this is essential for classic playoff hockey with, of course, playing 21st century.
Mm-hmm. And what you have to do. What you have to do this time of year in the playoffs, because it's, you need to be successful. And so New Jersey's marching on. Obviously, we touched the Leafs, first time in 19 years that they're back into the second round, thanks to a John Tavares overtime goal against Tampa Bay. And go check it out, fullpresshockey.com. The ratings bonanza from the weekend, and on my Twitter at Jim Berenger. You can get it always updated, but ratings through the roof. And John Tavares, the kid in the pajamas, gets it done. He ends the streak for the Islanders. He ends the streak for the Maple Leafs. Maple Leafs marching on. Obviously Vegas was the first team to go through. They understood what closing time was, and they had to do it on home ice. But a lot of these teams did it on the road, and it's crazy that they think that the road teams are 33-19 in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, more than 60%, which you would have thought that it would. It's still early in round two, so we don't know what's going to happen. But this trend pretty much continued last year through the first two rounds.
It did.
It slightly corrected later, but then again, even in those games, you could see where the road team didn't quite have the disadvantage that they usually do.
Home ice advantage in hockey doesn't mean anything anymore. It's not the same as it was back in the 90s, early 2000s. Home ice advantage doesn't mean anything anymore because you can play anywhere. The Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights go at it. Devils and Carolina start their series as well. New Jersey did well against Carolina, and I think, their speed is going to be, on display again against this team. And, I'm not saying that Antti Ranta and Frederik Andersen are not elite NHL goaltenders. They're in the NHL for a reason. It's not Igor Shesterkin. I think guys that couldn't find the back of the net in the first round for New Jersey are going to be able to find the back of the net in this round, you would think.
It's true. The one dynamic I will say that has to be considered is, it's the old acceleration equals force times, fun physics equations for hockey. But it is that acceleration of the Carolina forecheck from the neutral zone in that could give New Jersey some problems, especially early in the series.
So then this, I didn't want to bring this up today, but this is why I've been stating that Luke Hughes needs to be in the Devils lineup. And I'm not trying to get too Devil-centric here, but their breakout and transition has to be better. Mm-hmm. It was good enough against the Rangers, but that's the dynamic I think New Jersey needs in their lineup.
Do you wait, though? Do you wait till 3 and 4 where you have the control of the last line change? Because
I don't know. I don't know with this coach, to be honest, because I thought he should have gone in games 3 and 4 on the road too.
That's fair. I mean, it's something that kind of is not the elephant in the room, but it's the big giant, right? Silver.
Because he can skate. He's physical. He can move the puck.
He's not your average rookie.
He's not exactly. And what he did in the last couple of games of the season shows to me that he can handle the National Hockey League in the playoffs. You look what Matthew Nyes is doing for Toronto right now.
I think he's playing pretty good. He's playing better than that 39-year-old Mark Giordano, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even Brock Faber came in from Minnesota and played pretty good.
Yeah, so this isn't something that's a foreign concept. This has been done before in these playoffs.
Exactly, and to be honest, Graves, he's been good, but he can't move the puck. Severson, they sometimes get caught. So, and like you said, the Carolina forecheck, especially on the PK, because the Devils' power play struggled against Carolina this year and gave up 4 shorthanded goals. Now, Kira Schmidt has been lights out in the playoffs. So, he's rock solid back there for them. And I think he gives that team a little bit more confidence. But it's going to be an interesting series. For me, Vegas, you better stay out of the penalty box. You need to stay out of the penalty box.
Yeah. Look, and I know Edmonton. Obviously, we focus on Draisaitl and McDavid over and over and over again, and rightfully so. But we tend to forget about that other 100-point scorer in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's been really good on the power play as well, and the emergence of, Evan Bouchard, who Mr. Wilcroft has finally sort of trusted with the keys to the castle. Or
8 power play points in the first series.
I said this to people. Darnell Nurse is not the answer in Edmonton, and this cements it. If it hasn't before, it has now.
They got lucky to get through LA in 6 games, and I'll tell you why. Darnell Nurse cost them 2 games. It could cost them 3 games because of the way his performance in defensively in front of his own net. That's the one area that Edmonton needs to work on. Yes, Ekholm's been great, but he's made mistakes too. Defensively in front of Stuart Skinner, they have to be better.
It's weird. It was weird to watch for those that did not see the Edmonton's clincher game 6 against LA. Watch the first half of that game, and watch how many defensive breakdowns within 15 to 20 feet of Skinner's goal. Watch how many, because it multiplies quickly, and you're just left sitting there going, "Is this an NHL caliber defense?" Makes you think.
It does make you think, but I mean,
they did get better somewhat as that game went on. But again, too many times in the first halves of games, they play like that and they get caught. And you can't keep falling behind or getting caught flat-footed as many times as they do and be able to get away with it. After a while, it's going to catch up to you. I mean, it did last year, and for them, Vegas can make you pay and make you pay often.
Yeah, I mean, William Karlsson throwing back the clock to 2018. So was Marchessault. I mean, Mark Stone's looking like the old guy that we expect Mark Stone to be in the playoffs. We've seen Jack Eichel, what he's doing in the playoffs. He likes the bright lights. Yep. Even their defense is playing well. Now, I think Laurent Brossoit is going to get tested more than he did against Winnipeg.
Yeah, and people forget that he still gave up quite a few goals against Winnipeg too.
Yeah, I mean, but this offense is a little bit more electric.
A little more. Just a little more.
I mean, when you have the best player in the world on your team, and you have probably arguably the best duo in hockey right now with Draisaitl, who's a big-time playoff performer like Tkachuk, they're going to be tested. Now, Hyman's going. You got Evander Kane's going. Yamamoto scored. They're starting to get their depth scoring. If Ryan Nugent-Hopkins starts to get going, look out for the Oilers. I mean, Vegas, the fortress right now, tough building to play in, but Edmonton took the season series from them as well. They could play and get in there and continue this road success.
Right. I mean, Edmonton went 3-0-1 against Vegas this year. Now, I understand season records you can just toss out the window to a point. But you can't toss the power play out.
No.
And you can't toss out the top 6 advantage that Edmonton does have in this series. It's there.
Oh, it's there. Again, like we said, defensively, because I think the edge on defense goes to Vegas.
Right. And Vegas also gets back a couple guys tonight ironically on their defense that maybe we didn't expect for game 1. Maybe and that's big. That 2 big additions.
Shea Theodore is back.
Yeah, so that's huge for Vegas. They absolutely need all hands on deck for what's about to come.
And the thing is Connor McDavid's ready to break out and have like a big time breakout game. Vegas doesn't have the centers that LA did to slow him down.
Yeah, that was a big part of that series.
Danault and Kopitar are 2 of the best 2-way centers in the game, like defensive lockdown centers.
And look, no one's saying that guys like Dano and Kopitar are absolutely going to slow down McDavid, but they were able to funnel their team defense into the areas that McDavid normally thrives better than most teams in the NHL can, period. And that's the difference. Vegas just doesn't have those guys. You know, they have to go toe for toe, and let's face it, they have to have their foot on the gas pedal at all times.
So it doesn't look like Timo Meyer's playing tonight.
Didn't think so.
Yeah, I
It's
didn't think so
probably
either.
smart. I mean,
yeah.
Look, you don't want to take a chance. And I know people were saying, well, oh, this is something unheard of. No, it's not. We've seen this many times during the regular season and postseason where players felt all right and then didn't feel so good a day or two later. I mean, if anybody remembers, this is how we found out about. Remember the Crosby two games and 4 nights concussion?
Yep.
Where nobody knew that he even had the first concussion, and then he had the second.
Then he had the second, then he was out for a very, very long time.
So you can't mess around with things like this. It's not worth it to lose a guy for the entire playoffs or worse.
Right. And look, everybody wants to get on Trouba for the hit. Letter of the law by the rule book, it's a legal hit. Am I going to say it's a clean? No. But by the rule book, it's
his skates were on the ice. I mean, believe me, people were looking upside down and sideways, and there's not one replay that has him even really launching to a point.
No, but again, Meyer lost control of the puck, looked down for a second, didn't see it.
Yeah,
and he was going to go through the body if Meyer's heads up. So
again, you can't. I know everybody says, "Oh, well, his head was down and this and that," but also taller player hitting a smaller player already in a compacted position. Was it late? Again, was it egregiously late? And that answer is no.
No. I mean, even it looked like they were fine in the handshake line. It's not like anybody was mad about it and stuff.
Right.
So
yeah,
not like a big deal.
It's a nothing burger.
So one of my friends asked me this today, and they said, "Are the Leafs in trouble if they lose Game 2, or at least one of those teams when they're never out of it?" Look, Toronto can't go down 0-2. Just because I think it's going to be tough to win 2 games on the road now. Trends say they can win because they've done it. They're 3-0 in Florida right now. But that's a tall task to go down 0-2 and lose. I mean, look, when New Jersey did it, losing both games on home ice and come back. But Florida's got a lot of momentum right now.
Yeah, I mean, you have to honestly look at it this way. We don't know.
Right.
We don't have a definitive answer. You could say, hey, they could go down 0-2 and come right back. Sergei Bobrovsky normally gives up 3 goals like it's the desert's missed the rain. But he did it in Game 1. And to be fair, he played great in Game 7 against Boston. Is he getting that little bit of mojo that he had with Columbus? People forget that 10-game run that he had in that postseason was something else. I understand the later part of that Boston series in the second round didn't go so well, but he's the reason why that wasn't a sweep outright, and an ugly sweep at that, because you thought Tampa Bay outplayed Columbus. Boston literally ran Columbus out of the barn.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Bobrovsky, that easily would have Boston could have easily scored 5-6 goals a game in each game without a problem.
Right. And look, you got to give credit to Bobrovsky again. 2 times now he's knocked off the President's Trophy winners. He did it in 2019.
It's crazy.
But again, I put this out, and Zig Fergasi and a bunch of other people we respected know. Tampa was up 3-0 in Game 1 of that round 1 in 2019. Yep. What if they don't blow a 3-0 lead and can't score on them? It's a different series. I'm not saying Tampa's winning the cup that year. Maybe they still lose.
But you never know.
You never know. And that's where the game changed. And the series changed in game 5 when he stopped Marchand.
Yeah, because if you went over to I don't know if you might have saw the Canadian feed had the angle on this. After he stopped Marchand, you saw the body language on the Boston bench for the first time in that series of, something's wrong. That was the first time in that series that you noticed it. Because look, Boston was up 3-1 in the series. They were aiming to close it out. They had all guns ready to roll. And then that happens. That changed the momentum of the entire series right then and there.
And then Kachuk gets the goal. But the thing is defensively, the Bruins made uncharacteristic mistakes in that series. Now, give credit to the Panther forecheck for doing it. But it was things that we hadn't seen all year. And it bit them in the butt. You can't, like Marchand said it best. We shouldn't have been in that position. We had chances to do it, and we just shouldn't have been there. And he's right. And, game 6, I never forget the broadcast said it. They score a shorthanded goal. They say it's a back-breaking goal for Florida. You should win that game.
Yep. And yet
they didn't. And they found themselves in game 7. Anything can happen in game 7, and you're up 3-2 in game 7. And it's the same. And it's funny, you look at it, and I've had time to digest it. It's like the Penguins last year. Defensive mistakes cost them that series. Defensive mistakes cost the Bruins this series.
Some of the game results were different, obviously.
Right.
But how eerie in a grand scheme, though, are those two series when put together? It's pretty scary. I mean, look, yeah. I understand. Yes, I know Pittsburgh had to go to their third string goaltender, who, let's face it, should never see the light of an NHL day ever again. But it wasn't like Pittsburgh was completely out of that series.
Yeah.
And time again, that Penguins defense, and it wasn't just the defensemen. It was the Penguins team defense as a whole that would just give up turnover after turnover to a team that, let's face it, they were light years faster than.
Yep.
We've seen it before, and it does not take much in these playoffs in the year 2023 to turn a series around.
Nope.
Just ask Colorado.
Hey, just ask, Tampa.
Who Minnesota might be even the worst case at this point.
LA up 3-0 in game 4.
That's when you start ranking like first round losses, LA's might have been the most brutal.
You're up 3-0 in game 4. You're in control, and then you take power penalty after penalty after penalty, and the Oilers tie the game in the second period.
And if I'm right, at least 2 of those were offensive zone penalties to boot.
They were.
That's what's. And look, to be fair, other teams have done it and gotten away with it. But you don't get away with that against certain teams. And Edmonton is one that you really do not get away with something like that.
No, you don't. And look, Tampa's dynasty, modern day dynasty, came to an end. Yeah, Will Ferrell was funny with painting his face, and the Oiler fans did it back again to him. But like Tampa's modern day dynasty, I'm not sure if it's done, but it's going to be hard to bring the same team back, the salary cap, and they have a lot of questions to be answered. Boston does, the future of Bergeron and Krejci and Bertuzzi, and where do they go from here? The mess that is Calgary and Winnipeg.
How about this one? For those that don't know or haven't been reading it as much because of what else has been going on in hockey. Okay, so damn it. Knew that was going to happen.
Chris was going to say before he lost his connection, if you've been under a rock, if you've just been following the playoffs, if you haven't seen the other news, the Calgary Flames parted ways with head coach Daryl Sutter before his extension kicks in, but they still have to pay him the $8 million. But prior to that, Brad Treliving decides he doesn't want to come back as the general manager, so Don Maloney's going to take over. Then you have in Winnipeg, after Game 5, after they lose, Rick Bowness calls out his entire team, saying he was disappointed, disgusted with the effort, disgusted with the players. It's the same stuff he saw in February when there was no pushback when the team was facing adversity. The Jets players don't want to rebuild. There's definitely disconnect between Blake Wheeler and Rick Bowness and some of the players in that locker room. You can't bring the same team back that you had in Winnipeg. Calgary's a complete different mess because Jonathan Huberdeau is coming out and saying, well, Daryl Sutter's not putting players in a position to succeed. Gee, where have I heard that before? Oh, New York with the Rangers and Gerard Gallant. And the Rangers have questions around Vladimir Tarasenko, about Patrick Kane. Kakko needs a new contract. Lafreniere's an RFA. Shesterkin's going to be up in a couple of years. They're up against the cap. These teams that have been eliminated in the playoffs, you look at some of their failures and you look at some of their, question marks heading into the offseason. It's like, are they bringing the same team back? Where are they going from here? Obviously with the Rangers, you're not sure, who's coming back. Obviously we said Patrick Kane's hurt. Not sure if he's going to be back. Tarasenko wants to win. He felt like this was the team to do it. He likes the team. He likes the vibe. Wants to win a Stanley Cup. Connor Hellebuck said he wants to win a Stanley Cup. He doesn't want to be part of the rebuild. Same with Kyle Connor. It's just, there's a lot of messes around the league, and a lot of them are in Canada right now. And, Calgary, I don't know who they're going to get, what they're going to find, but it's very interesting that they tried to get the GM extended. He didn't want to talk about it during the regular season. He kind of was upset that Daryl got an extension beforehand, and now they're both gone. What a mess Calgary is.
We have owner wanting the bailout. We have a bailout of a bailout. And then for further insult, we have players who didn't want to play with the coach from almost month 1 of the regular season. If you want to believe some of the rumors that have been floated out in Calgary media. And I know, Jim, you talked to some of the guys up there in Calgary like I do. And the first thing they said was this was a train wreck from pretty much the opening few weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, you now Brad Treliving, to his credit, did everything he could do to put a winning team on the ice. Oliver Killington should be back next year. That was a major loss on their defense. But their goaltending, we documented it. Their goaltending needed to be better, and it wasn't. It was not good. Jacob Markstrom just wasn't good enough for this team to get in.
Right.
But as I said before, Jonathan Huberdeau comes out and says Daryl Sutter hasn't put players in a position to succeed. Well, maybe that style of hockey doesn't work anymore. Paging Lou Lamoriello on the island. Paging Lane Lambert on the island. Like, you acquired Bo Horvat. Missing in action the playoffs.
Milk carton.
Like, bro, where was this guy? He might be hurt, but the question needs to be raised. Was it the player, or is it the system that doesn't allow the Islanders to score goals consistently?
You'd almost have to lean the system. Yeah,
Same with the Flames.
The system was awful. Let's see. I know there was supposedly around the All-Star break, Treliving wanted to bring up the goalie from the AHL.
Oh, Dustin Wolf?
They want to bring up Wolf. They wanted to bring up Wolf a lot sooner than what happened at the end of the season. And Sutter and others said no, and that was it. I mean, everywhere Treliving turned. Now, it's not to say that he's faultless in this, but if you look at it from a common sense standpoint, You have a general manager who tried to several times fire his coach during the season, and the owner told him no. Then you go and fire him anyway because the owner is getting out of Dodge, basically.
Yeah, because and that's the big reason why Treliving didn't sign an extension in Calgary,
He
because
knew.
he knew Sutter had a 2-year extension, and he knew he couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, the math is pretty simple. I mean, you start going through, it's like, okay, you have a goaltender not playing well. You have guys being, for a lack of a better term, butchered as far as how they're utilized. Then you have injuries. And then the cycle just keeps going and going and going, and they're just dancing around the 500 mark where they shouldn't be. Now, are we saying that Calgary should have been a 105-point team? No. But at the same time, they shouldn't have been where they were as far as the playoff bubble. They should have been on the other side of the bubble.
Right, because the roster was good enough to do that.
Right. I mean, 100 points was not unreasonable for that team.
No, and I understand you can't plug and play players, and they're different types of players, and Mangiapane's not a 35 goal scorer. Lindholm's not what he is, but now there's a lot of questions about our guys wanting to come back. Maybe they will. They have to figure out what type of team they are, because when they play fast, they're a very good team.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes down to two things. If they're allowed to keep playing at that upper sort of, not high octane, but kind of like a step below, they're fine. But they need that goaltender that can make that one save.
And he didn't give it to him. Now maybe he can do it next year, but
he can't early. I'm going to Wolf.
Right, exactly. And then you have Winnipeg, where Connor Hellebuck says
wow,
he wants to win it. He doesn't want to be a part of the rebuild. He wants to win Stanley Cup. Kyle Connor doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. We don't know what they're going to do with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Scheifele wants to be like Yzerman, and most likely Blake Wheeler's not going to be a Winnipeg Jet next year.
People think Calgary's a mess. Think of the culture that's Winnipeg in the last decade. Calgary, this has only been over a year. Winnipeg, you can go back to the Evander Kane tracksuit incident and just go and just go, wow, this is just keeps going and going and going. Well, what is the one common thread in all of this? Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Mm-hmm.
Is Winnipeg going to fire him? It certainly does not look like it at all. And it bluntly, it's been said by several members of the Winnipeg media. Marat said it a few days ago, right after their sort of postmortem. This team, and I quote, is content with mediocrity, making the playoffs, and cashing that first round revenue.
And that's no way to be in the National Hockey League.
Especially now.
No, and the Devils were kind of guilty of that too.
They all were.
Back in the day. They're back in the day. They were. As much as they don't want to admit it, they were.
They were.
But yeah, I mean, you can't live in mediocrity and just be a playoff bubble team. Look how it's not really working for Nashville.
Nashville's its own mess.
Right. And then, like I said, to bring up the island, Lou doesn't have a new contract.
Yeah.
Are they going to extend him? What about the coach? Everybody's like, oh, Barry Trotz. Well, maybe Barry Trotz wasn't the problem.
I think it's pretty clear that Trotz wasn't the problem on the island now.
They need to address goal scoring. The general manager just loves to have this internal salary cap. The game's passed him by. And people need to realize that the days of how he became such a great general manager are gone. And that he is what he is. And he just relies on this old way of thinking. And it hurts the offensive production of a team that has good players.
Yeah, look at how consistently this team scored 2 goals or less during the regular season.
Yeah.
That's all you need to look at and know that this is not just an isolated problem.
No, and I don't want to hear from Islanders fans, oh, well, when I would put on my observations, well, oh, look, again, Islanders lose because no lack of goal scoring. Yeah, they scored 5 goals here and there. That's not good enough. You can't consistently score 2 goals a game, rely on your goaltender and defense to win hockey games. And by the way, in an elimination game, Cal Clutterbuck can't be your only goal scorer.
Ever. Yeah. Think about like the top offenses in the league now. The top 8 offenses probably average right around 3.5 goals a game or greater now. The Islanders struggled to score 2.5 goals a game on a regular basis. Regular. This wasn't just something that maybe over a period of 10 games, this is a period. There are chunks of 20, 30, 40 games in this regular season where the Islanders barely scored 2.5 goals a game. You can't do that in the NHL.
Not in today's NHL.
No. Three goals or else.
And then to close it out, we'll go to the big city, and just like Rangers top players no showed. We already mentioned Kane was hurt. He was hurt all year. He was hurt in Chicago. He's hurt before the trade deadline. Yep. Go find the audio. We talked about it. Panarin no showed. He even said it. He got frustrated. Zibanejad, whatever. Kreider, again, he's just a devil killer, especially on the power play. Shesterkin was their best player, and you got to give him credit. He kept them in the series. But they have a lot of question marks too about who's coming back.
It's gonna be a juicy time in the Rangers world this summer.
And did you see the quotes from Kakko today? I mean, he wants more ice time and he wants more power play time.
And look, this is another case where we're talking about player utilization and coaching staffs, and that never ends well. Look, I'll say this: is Capo entirely wrong? No. Is his talent level where it should be? No.
But whose fault is that?
That may be the biggest problem of all. Can you assign the fault there? Is it more on the player or is it more on the development and coaching staff? It's a little of both.
It's a little of both, but how can you develop when you're constantly on a third line? You're drafted number 2.
That's the bigger problem.
Same with Lafreniere. How can you develop into a player that maybe the expectations were too high for these players, but how can you develop if you're not put in the situations to succeed? And that's the same problem on the island with the Islanders, with Wahlstrom and all these guys.
Yeah, you look at Wahlstrom, you look at a certain defenseman that Islander fans like to pick on because, God forbid, he has a offensive pulse. And go, well, gee, why are you hammering on this guy who can actually bring you offense? Oh yeah, he's going to make some mistakes. You know what? That's part of life.
It's part of life. It's part of developing as a player.
And that's been too often the case with some of these old school coaches.
Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens this offseason. A lot of stuff coming out, obviously, with these team breakup days and where players might go off season. But the Stanley Cup playoffs continue. They roll on tonight. Game 1 of the Oilers and Vegas Golden Knights. Devils and Hurricanes about to drop the puck. This has been Full Press Hockey Weekly. Jim Berenger, Chris Wassel, Ian producing. Get it, Full Press NHL on Twitter, fullpresshockey.com, fullpresscoverage.com. Get it, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Enjoy the games, everybody.
Peace out.